every day.
So yeah, we're going to talk about food as a point of connection with history, culture, and individuals. So before I get into the food of Oman, I think we should start by talking about where Oman is. Most people that I meet here don't know, or they think I'm talking about Amman, Jordan, or Omaha, Nebraska. It's over here in the Middle East. More specifically, right down here. So the food you probably think of when most people think of Middle Eastern food is actually Mediterranean cuisine that comes from this area right in here. Lebanon, Palestine, Israel, Syria. That's your hummus and baba ganoush and falafel and shawarma and so many amazing things and lots of olives and olive oil. But as you can see, Oman is all the way down here, an entire huge desert away from the Mediterranean. And that really has informed the food. As the core of Omani food is a Bedouin pragmatism, trying to survive in a very arid climate, but then really amped up and enhanced by the flavors of the world, because it's right here on the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean. So these coastal people traveled all over the east to bring the food and the spices and unusual ingredients back with them to create a food that's very unusual. It's very different from the more heavy rice and meat dishes that you find in Saudi Arabia, and it's a complete world apart from what you think of from the Levant, which are those hummuses and nice fresh salads. So a little bit about the geography of Oman. I'll kind of show you some pictures starting down here. This is the Dhofar region, and it's right on the border with Yemen, and it's the only part of Oman that's physically connected to the Indian Ocean, which is a real ocean. All the rest of it is connected to a gulf, which is awesome for swimming. It's very warm, and there's not a lot of waves, and great for seafood. So they've got incredible shrimp and tuna and many other things. So down here, you have this area that's very much affected by the Indian monsoons. It's brown most of the year, and then during Kharif season, it turns emerald green. You move up, and it's the beginning of the empty quarter, the largest desert in the world that expands into Saudi Arabia. And then up along the Gulf, you have these picturesque seaside towns, and then some of the highest mountain ranges in the entire Middle East. So in this tiny country, about the size of Kansas, you've got all this geographic diversity. So this is a picture from Salalah. So you can see lush, green camels. And then this is a picture I took with some of the Bedouin gals in Wahiba Sands, which is one of the deserts. And as you can see, she's on her cell phone. The infrastructure is incredible there. There's better cell phone reception in the desert in Oman than I get driving up the coast of California. And this is more of that, the stunning empty quarter desert. And the camels, which are incredibly important to the culture there. Because before, when there were lean times, or when they were on some of their overland caravan routes, they would survive on dried dates and camel's milk. And it actually gave them all the nutrients that they needed to be relatively healthy until they could get some other things. Then we move up to the mountains. This is the Hajar mountain range. Specifically, this is from Jabal Akhtar. And it's very rocky and rugged and seemingly inhospitable, and they build villages into the sides of the mountains. But on this, they have created kind of stepped orchards where they grow incredible pomegranates and apples, apricots, and roses that they distill into a smoky rose water. So you can kind of see the steps there. Very much a different world. And then we come to the sea. There are places in Oman where the desert actually runs right up against the sea. And it's stunningly beautiful and very, a great picture of what this strange mashup of country is, which we'll talk about in the food in a second. There's also these little fishing villages, people hang out. The bounty of the sea is incredible. I'm ruined for shrimp for the rest of my life. They're about this big, and they're so meaty and sweet, and they use them quite a lot in the cooking. And then there's just extremely luxurious, gorgeous beach resorts. So the sea is more than just a source of their seafood. It is really one of the pivotal things that makes Oman Oman because of the spice trade. So it's right here, and it's at the intersection of some really important trade routes from the Far East all the way down here in Zanzibar on the east coast of Africa. And then they also took overland routes this way and then up the Red Sea all the way to Egypt. So this is a country that has had the flavors of the world since ancient times. They were one of the most powerful trading empires in the entire region for a period of time. And so what they have locally, they have their fish, they have their dates, and they have frankincense. Those were their main exports. So everything else, everything that you were tasting just now, that all came from outside and then they made it their own. The rice came from South Asia. The spices came from Indonesia, from China, from the Malabar coast in India. But the way that they interpreted those ingredients was very distinctive. It was very much their own. But you can still kind of get the essence of those things. Like you'll see the biryani. It uses a similar technique to Indian biryani, but it doesn't have the same kind of spicy masalas that they would use there. Where the spinach is actually a Zanzibari dish. But in Oman, rather than using fresh coconuts, because they don't have fresh coconuts, except down in Salalah, they use dehydrated coconut powder. So it's a country that has really done the most with what they've gathered from the outside world, making it their own, and also making it more practical. So like the lentils that you have tonight are a great example of that, kind of this casual use of spices. They don't make any of their dishes intensely flavorful, not very spicy, but they will dump everything in the kitchen pantry in it. They'll throw in some cloves and black pepper and cinnamon bark and cardamom, and they call it Omani masala. But nobody will tell you what's in it, because it's pretty much just everything. And then they have some things that have been transformed in Oman, like black limes. They took limes from Malaysia, which were the true sweet lime, and when they imported it into the port of Muscat, they realized, okay, this is perishable fruit, it's awesome, but there's no way it's going to make it either to our next destination in Basra, Iraq, or in Iran, or into the interior. So they started drying the limes. They would lay them out on straw mats and let them bake in the sun. Sometimes they blanched them in salt water first to get the color more consistent. And in doing so, they created an entirely new ingredient. And so I have some here. And I think they're very fun. I'm going to pass this bowl around so you can smell them. But they're very funky. They're almost a fermented sour flavor. So you can either work with them by popping a hole into things, then you'll get some of the sourness. But if you want more intensity, I'm going to break this table. Gotta bust these guys open. If you want some of the bitterness, you leave the seeds inside, you just dump the whole thing in. If you just want a little bit, some people soak them and then bore a little hole so that some of the flavor seeps out into stews. And then if you just want the funky, sour taste, I'm sure most of you cannot see this from there, but the flesh is black and chewy. And you can just eat it. It's like sour gummy candy. So it's pretty cool ingredient. And they use it, sometimes they'll grind up the entire thing and use the powder in stews. But the primary way they use it is by just dumping the whole thing in there. So we have a tea back there that you guys may or may not have tried, the lime tea. And for that, you break these up, you take out the bitter seeds, and you let it boil for about 5 to 10 minutes. And you guys, I think the cooks took pity on you. This is like first timer tea.
Yeah.
Normally you let it go quite a bit longer, and it is pungent. The first time you taste it, you're like, ooh, no. But you sip it again, and it's got almost this addictive quality. It's a really good digestive. So I'm gonna bust open a few of these, and I'm gonna pass them around to you because they're kind of hard to imagine or describe without getting hands-on. It's a little dangerous. So just pass that guy around. This is one example of like how innovative they were with their products, and the way we have they've like really connected with the rest of the world is that now black limes are also called lima Omani, which means Omani limes in Arabic. It's a really important ingredient in Persian cooking, in Southern Iraqi cooking, in Egyptian cooking, because they didn't just create something and use it for themselves, they shared it with all the other trade ports that were such a big part of their empire. So when they imported these spices, it wasn't just spices. They also imported a lot of culture. And that's really evident in the national dress of Oman. So they were these white, traditionally it's pure white, but then, they fancy it up with some color or do a different color. These kandoras, or dish dasha, and that's what it's typical dress that they wear everywhere in the Gulf region of the Middle East. But they still like to define themselves by their dress. So in Oman, they wear the tassel to the side, whereas in the Emirates, it's straight down the middle. There's a different collar in Kuwait. There's also a different collar in Saudi Arabia. So that's the dish dasha, which is very regionally specific. But then if you look at the male headdress, these are called musars, and they're made from Indian pashmina scarves. So that just goes to show how important those relationships were, that this imported item is now part of their official national dress that government officials have to wear and pretty much everybody wears. And then the kuma cap, these are hand-embroidered caps. That would be the other option for male headwear. And those are an import from Zanzibar, which was one of their trading outposts and actually part of Oman until 1965. And even after they split, it has remained a really important part of their cultural identity. So they're very proud of their these connections and the diversity. For the women, they wear, of course, black abaya outside, but that's not their traditional dress. Their traditional dress is more like this. It's very vibrant, it's very colorful. And those textiles did not come from Oman. These are imported from India, from Pakistan, from China. So again, it's like they've taken what they wanted from the world and made it their own. And a very regionally specific thing are these little falcon masks. And that's something that the Bedouin women like to wear. And it actually pop fashion now that's becoming kind of the symbol that the young girls like to put on accessories and stuff because it's so iconic for the Gulf region. And what a lot of people assume here is, oh, they're trying to cover their face and hide the women away. But these ladies explained it to me in a very nice way. They said, actually, the younger you are, or the prettier you are, wear a thinner one because it's beautiful and it makes us look like a falcon. And falcons are very revered in that region. And so they were like, it looks like the falcon's very alluring. And the older you get, the bigger it gets. So you don't have to wear as much makeup. All right, well that's practical. How is it to protect from the sun? They're like, no, it's fashion. So the best place to see kind of this great melting pot is in their capital city of Muscat, which is a gorgeous architectural example of fusing modern with heritage. this is the Grand Mosque. Down here is their opera house. This is one of their luxury hotels. A family on the beach. And the Sultan Qaboos, he's put in place a lot of building codes to try to ensure that there is still an Omani feel to Oman. He doesn't want it to become Dubai. He didn't want it to modernize too quickly. So he wanted to hold on to their heritage, and one of the ways they did that was through building codes. So in Muscat, you can taste a lot of the diversity of food, and one of those foods is the Zanzibari cuisine. So the spinach you ate was an example of that, the wonderful spinach, and we'll throw chilies in there. It's probably the spicier of the Omani foods, although it's still not spicy to like our Mexican, South American standards. But here you even see in the Zanzibari cuisine, there's some Indian influence, like with the chapati bread. And that's because in the 19th century, Indian traders were going back and forth between Zanzibar and South India. And then they were going from Zanzibar back up to Muscat into the port cities of Sur and Salah. And so, of course, they were trading recipes, they were trading foods. So we have the chapati, this is coconut beans, and this is coconut mahogo, which is a cassava, which we tried to work on a recipe for that, and couldn't get it to taste like anything but paste. So that you will not find in the book, but if you ever go to Oman, there is a wonderful place to try it. This is one of the places that really helped inform us about some of the history of immigration from Zanzibar to Muscat, and it's a place called Zanzibar Island. The owner's name is Nasser, and during the revolution in 1965, he came to Muscat and he opened this restaurant to try to maintain kind of some connection to the place where he had grown up in Stonetown. And people love it. They flock to it. The Zanzibari community there really, that's one of the big ways that they maintain their connection to their past. One of the big celebrity chefs in Oman is named Chef Isa, and he had us, me and my co-author, to his home and shared recipes with us. But the person who actually sat down and took the time to teach us the recipe was this woman, Layla, who grew up in Stonetown and now works as a culinary instructor in the National Hospitality Institute in Muscat. And she taught us all kinds of things from smashed green bananas, which is an awesome recipe. I definitely recommend it. It's very hard to find green bananas here, not plantains, but bananas. She was great, and she helped us develop the recipe for the coconut spinach, the way that we work here. So this is a bit of a blurry, but a picture of the old Muscat. And this is where the old Mutra souk is. This was one of the oldest trading ports. And there is a people group who lived there that call themselves Lawatis. And they're actually kind of a Creole mix of people from South Asia, from Persia, from Africa, who all intermarried and created their own Creole language in this trading center. And they claim a dish that's very beloved there called paplo. And it's a seafood soup. I think of it kind of like the chiappini in San Francisco, chip it in, and everybody who's working on the sea just throws in whatever fish scraps they have. But maybe they don't do that. But it developed out of that, out of like everybody coming together to create a communal meal. And it's a very simple dish. It's delicious. But another group also claims it there. That would be the Baluchi people. And the Baluchi people came over as soldiers during the revolution from parts of Persia and Pakistan in the Baloch region. And they also lay claim to this dish. They say, oh, no, that is ours. We made that. So there's a little bit of contention on that. But we definitely know it came from outside because there's no P in Arabic. And the dish's name is paplo. So definitely either came from Persia, like some kind of of Persian origin or some kind of South Asian origin where they have a plus sound. And that's the woman who taught us that dish. That's the mother of one of our dear friends, Miana Bellucci. So clearly she set up this Bellucci dish. So another really kind of fun city that we went and learned a lot in was a place called Sur. And it's a city where they used to build the wooden dhows that took everybody on their voyages all the way to China, to India, and they had a lot of Italians who would stop there, which is kind of weird because they didn't really stop anywhere else, but there was something about the trade winds that really made it easier for people to get there. And so you see that reflected in the food. Like, it's the only place in the entire country where we saw them using fennel seed, and they used it in their bread. And that's native to the Mediterranean, and they think that Italians brought it with them. And that's where I think we encountered this vegetable biryani that we served you here tonight, because it's not typical. Typical rice dishes in Oman, they're meat-based. It's boiled in meat broth to give it more flavor, or it takes on more of a almost an Iranian feel with like the layers of nuts and different things. But here, I think they got a little bit more playful with their food, and they branched out a little bit to use more vegetables because they were one of the first places that the ships would stop on their way up the coast from East Africa. So they had a lot more access. And the family who taught us that dish, they were amazing. I'm not showing the picture of the woman of the house because she doesn't feel comfortable being photographed. And so we just took a lot of pictures of her amazing family. And she was a very old school style Omani lady in that she had 14 children. And the only response to that in the Middle East is to say, mashallah. It's like, bless you, God bless you. And having that many children, it's changing a lot now. A lot of the younger generation are having less, but it's part of the reason why rice is so incredibly important in that region. And that's because it's expandable. You know, you can flavor in a huge pot of rice, which is a little bit of chicken, or a handful of spices and feed a crowd. And that's incredibly important when you have 14 children, or 9 children, or even the more common 5 or 6 children. And then up on the mountain of Jabal Akhtar, we spent time with another family who taught us a lot of different recipes. They taught us about coconut cookies, which I found really interesting because they were so far away from the coast. I was like, what are you doing with coconut, like fresh coconut? And it's because the mountain towns they were another stop on the trade routes going into the interior, into the desert regions. So that was, the overland routes rather than the sea routes. And so one of their biggest exports were their pomegranates and their dates, and their biggest imports were fish and coconut and things from the coastal areas. And this is also where I learned the technique that worked for me for making Omani bread. So I've seen it made all over the country. It's called khubz ragag, and it is paper thin. I've seen Bedouin ladies make a fire over cinder blocks in the middle of the desert and make this bread. I've seen immigrants from South Asia in tea shops make this bread. And then this woman sat down and tried to teach me how to make this bread. They all made it look easy, and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to try it for you, but first I want to show you how it's supposed to look. So, it almost looks like it's going to be scraps. This is a hot surface. You just touch this very simple dough that's made using just flour, salt, and water. Stick it there and scrape it off. It almost looks like what we would throw away, but they love this paper-thin bread. It's crushed up and mixed with soups and meat to make almost, I mean, this, the only way I learned how to describe it is like a bread pudding, a savory bread pudding. Might not sound appetizing, but it's this incredible technique that I had never seen before. So I am going to make this dough, which I was going to make for you, but I'm going to skip that actually. You just need that flour. Like I was working with the chef earlier and he was like, this seems wet, should we add flour? I was like, nope. You just have to put your back into it and just keep messing with this until it gets, you see how elastic that is? Yeah. That's an elastic dough. That takes effort. You just gotta work it for about 15 minutes straight, which these gals do. And then it gets to be about this consistency. First you have your smoking hot pan. You test it with a little water. And just touch it. And you really got to play with the temperature, because if it's too hot, this part of the bread, your dough cooks, and then you can't keep sticking it. It's very messy. And the number one important tool is a paint chipper. That's what everybody uses. So as you saw, she was scraping the top off. So you gotta wait till it cooks long enough for that. Then you just work your way around. And yeah, I'm not that good. I need an assistant to hold on to this pan. Then it comes out Does anybody want to come up and try it? Yeah, come on. It's fun. It feels like silly putty.
You want to try it?
What, like 3 people? Heck, I'm going.
All right, you're going to get messy. So you just
There's George.
Try not to burn the skin off your hand. Take a handful and then just touch it to the pan. All right, I'll help you out. Keep going. There you go. Now just touch it to the pan. Yep, work your way around. No, you got it. Nice.
Oh, I got to taste it. Eat it.
That's good. All right, you got it. That's it. That's all you need. Now dump that guy back in there. Now I'll hold the pan for you. Now you can scrape some of the top part off, some of the yucky stuff. Yeah. Scrape like that? Yeah, you think there's going to be nothing left, right? Yeah. But it will. It's going to be that paper thin bread. I'll help you out. See, we're not Oman. We're not going to get this one-handed like they do. You missed this. Yeah, you got it. Don't be afraid of it.
Oh, well done.
Nice.
Painter every summer.
Yeah. Right.
Nice. Did anybody else want to come try it?
No, I just want to eat it. I just want to eat it. No, I just wanted to eat it.
Meat and lentil rice dish that's made in the southern part of the country in Dhofar, around Salalah, where they love meat. And this is just a typical, they call it kabuli, and it's a rice made with the broth of a chicken that they boiled, but they then fry and put on top, along with a lot of rices. And then there's this plain old basmati rice that they serve with everything from like the lentils that you're having right now to that pavlov soup is served on top. And they've even found different ways of dealing with rice. This is their main celebration dish, which is called shua. And during the Eid holidays, they will take meat, slather it in a mixture of oil and spices, wrap it in banana leaves, stuff it in a palm frond bag, and then leave it underground to slow cook for a day. Then on the second day of Eid, they'll pull it out and share that meal, of course, over a massive platter of rice. They also turn rice into savory porridges. This is haris, which is actually wheat berries, but a dish that looks almost identical is called arsia, and it's rice that's just boiled down with chicken until it becomes like cream of wheat. texture. There's another dish called madruba, where it's the chicken and the rice is cooked down with a whole lot more spices and turmeric, and then it's topped with cardamom infused ghee. And that almost to me is reminiscent of dishes that like congee that you would find in East Asia, but definitely a different flavor profile. So as with a lot of Omani food, it echoes other places, but they've really made it their own. But I think the importance of rice, it goes beyond the nutritional value or being a nice heavy midday meal. It's about the communal act of eating it together. And the traditional way of having a rice meal in Oman is to sit around a big platter and eat it with your hand. And there's always, your piece of meat on top. But unlike here, where we're like, no, that's mine. There's no fighting over the food. You have your area. You know there's going to be enough because this platter of rice is this big. And people, it's a chance to be generous with each other. Like I've seen, like mothers give their children, nice piece of chicken on the top. Husbands hand feed their wives. It's like this very sweet, intimate act that reinforces intimate relationships and friendships, like this group of dudes down in Salalah. And this was the family in Sur. When we finally finished cooking together and she finished teaching me all these dishes, we all sat together and shared a meal in the same way. Sometimes the kids get their food first because they can't wait. But even they share out of their same tiny dish. And I think it reinforces their ideas of community and tribe. Another way that those ideas are reinforced is through the most important act of hospitality, which is the offering of kahwa and dates. Kahwa is their Arabic coffee, and it's very lightly ground beans that actually came from Ethiopia up through Yemen. And they were grown in Yemen and ended up in Oman as well as the rest of the region. And these very lightly roasted green beans are ground with cardamom and brewed. And then a little bit of rose water is added at the end. So the resulting beverage, it's not, the intense black coffee or Turkish coffee that we might be more used to. It's almost tea-like in color and consistency. And it's not taken with sugar or with cream. The only way you sweeten it is by eating it with a bite of date. And they're served in these tiny little glasses called fenjan. And traditionally it would be held in that's called a dala.